Yeah. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Prashant Ajmera. I'm a founder and CEO of the Ajmera Law Group or Ajmera Law International. I have more than 30 years of an experience in global mobilities and cross-border law. I'm a Canadian citizen and I work with the HNIs and ultra HNIs family offices, particularly for the residency and citizenship by investment. Similarly, I also work with the uh, investors who are interested in obtaining the residency and citizenship by investment. I'm also an author of the couple of books. One is A Millionaire on the Move, which helps the company to expand their business out of India. So this is our fourth webinar series, which we are doing on European Union and particularly European company dealflow.eu and Ventures.eu. And as I mentioned in my earlier webinars, that this webinar series is started increasing a lot of interest in India. Though we have a very limited presence on our webinar, but now wherever I'm going out for a meetings or this morning I was in my chamber meeting, so people were asking, "Oh, Mr. Ajmera, what you are doing with the Europe? Please help us, and how can we do business with the Europe?" So it has started creating an interest and attractions about this one. In the first three webinars, we talked about the different issues and different matters and where this particular company, dealflow.eu and ventures.eu help. And today, this is our fourth and the last webinar of this series, where the speaker is Fernando Ferreira. And he has more than 25 years of an experience in venture capital, having worked in the largest Portuguese early stage funds, investing in leading unicorn, including OutSystems and BitSite. Board level experience in reference Europe and US startups with investors such as Amazon and Google. So it's a very vast experience. And now he's heading or leading the Ventures.eu's investment strategies, deal evaluations, and portfolio growth. So they started with helping the startup in European Union, backed by the European Union. Now, obviously, they have a large portfolio of European startups, and some of them are unicorn. You see all the, the logos on the right side. And now they have their first fund created for the variety of reasons. So let's hear from the Fernando what he's been doing with the Ventures.eu. Fernando, let's hear from you.
Thank you very much, Prashant, for your kind words and invitation to this series of webinars. So for the participants that have watched the previous webinars, what sets Ventures.eu apart from other European VCs and funds is the amazing platform that we have been able to build in the last 6 years through our sister company, Dealflow. We started by supporting the European Innovation Council program, so a 10 billion euro deep tech push by the European Commission to close the gap between Europe and China and the US. We set up for them their back office. We will build a platform to give visibility to their startups. And since then, we have won several contracts to do the startup onboarding, to match startups with investors, and the one I think is the most interesting for the fund, to match startups with the largest European and US corporates. This enables the fund to have access to the best European startups, to use the corporates to jointly assess and accelerate them. How? Basically, in the case of our first investment, we asked a couple of corporates from our network, what did they think of the startup we were interested in? Would they buy the product? Were we missing something? And we actually got them one customer and even one co-investor to the round. So it's a wonderful way to have a third party helping us with the assessment of the investment opportunity, and also to start immediately accelerating the startup by getting them new reference customers. And so that is basically the platform. We have 24,000 startups, 1,200 investors, 200 corporates. So a great platform on top of which to build a fund. The funds team, besides myself, we have Thijs Povel, the founder of Dealflow, who has more than 15 years of experience in venture capital and private equity at funds such as Holdspring Digital and a couple of other family offices. And also Eric Bushley, our data and AI wizard, who basically biggest job is to make the possible leanest fund with the smaller costs possible. Throughout our career, Thijs and I have been able to achieve a 5 times multiple on the investments made, gross multiple, with, of course, some write-offs, but also several success stories, like, for instance, MakerSite, where Thijs was able to get a 70 times return on investment, or BitSite and OutSystems, some of my investments where I was able to get a 15 times multiple. Due to the excellent startups we have access to, we think we will be able to reproduce this 5 times investment, a return. And once we deduct the costs of running the fund, we are targeting a net 5 times return for the investment. And as I always like to say, also with the same split between Portuguese startups and non-Portuguese startups. So roughly 60% Portuguese startups, 40% non-Portuguese startups, and why this division to be also eligible for the Golden Visa program. We have also been fortunate to invest with some of the biggest names in the industry. I, for instance, did the Define Crowd seed round with Amazon and Sony. Moody's invested $250 million in the Series E of BitSite. KKR and Tiger, some of the greatest growth players, invested in the later stages of OutSystems.
Mhm.
Sorry, there seems to be in terms of the investment strategy, our aim is to raise a 30 million fund to invest in seed and Series A deep tech startups, 60% in Portugal, 40% across the rest of Europe, and sector-wise. So, but it seems that I have problem with
Is the
my
connection failing you, Fernando?
yeah, it seems so, or at least it's my computer that is failing me.
You probably have to reshare it.
Stopped sharing. Okay. Let me, sorry, get back to it. And so I was saying, in terms of our investment strategy, in terms of sectors, that we have a focus on deep tech, but with some flexibility between ICT, hardware, and climate tech. Going back to one of our biggest differentiators, in our opinion, besides the knowledge and expertise and networks built by the partners, it's clearly this one, our corporate network. So in the last 12 months, we have organized corporate matchmaking projects with more than 25 of the largest European and US corporates. like Coca-Cola, Unilever, Vattenfall, Philips, ABB, really the biggest names. And what we do is basically we go to these corporates, we ask them for their innovation challenges, we get back to our database of startups, we select around 50 startups that we think are a good match. Then jointly with the corporate, we shortlist around 15. We prep them and we get back to the corporate headquarters. And the objective is to get at least 2 pilot contracts per project. And we have been able to overachieve this target. And we think that by doing this and getting the trust of the corporates, that we actually bring them high quality startups, that we are also able to then, when the fund finds an exciting startup that we think is top notch, then we do the other way around. So we select 2 or 3 corporates that we think are a good fit. We introduce the startup to them and we ask for its feedback. Would you buy this startup solution? Is there anything we are not seeing? And it's a very nice way to do an alternative commercial DD and to also start accelerating immediately the startup by getting reference customers. And also one concern that we have, which is the exit. We don't think that we can only rely on the IPO as a way to sell the startups we invested in. So we think that the most common exit route will be an acquisition by a big corporate. And so what we have in mind is to, as soon as possible, try to foster close relationships between startups and big corporates so that they can gradually build a relationship, they can build a business case, and then be bought by a big corporate. And this sometimes can even happen without the startup being a very great success. If they have a top team and an innovative technology, even if it doesn't grow as we all would like to, there is always the possibility of doing this selling. I've done it in the past. For instance, one of my cybersecurity companies called Fight was sold to Barracuda exactly following this same model. And so it's also a very nice way to de-risk the investment by minimizing the write-offs. And even when the startup is not very successful, we are even though able to get our money back plus 20 or 25%. It's not a huge success, but it's very nice so as not to have that many write-offs. And so that is, and giving you also a bit more of details about what we are doing. So as I've mentioned, targeting a 30 million euro fund, minimum ticket 150,000 euros. To be fair, what we have discovered is that our golden visa investors, for instance, mainly from the US, have been investing around 250,000 euros with us. So basically splitting the minimum investment between 2 funds. So to get the Portuguese golden visa, you need to invest at least 500,000 euros. Usually they split it between 2 funds, a more conservative fund that invests in the stock exchange, for instance, and then in a high risk but also high return in fund like ours. And we have discovered that especially when the investor has a previous knowledge of the tech world, of venture capital, like we have, for instance, a senior VP of engineering from Cisco, We have a retired managing partner from Accenture that when these people are truly knowledgeable about the sector, they really see our differentiation and they end up investing in us. And so, in terms of the duration, there's 8 years plus two possible extension periods of plus 2 years and plus 1 year. Management fee is the standard 2% per year during the investment period of 5 years, which then drops by 0.2% per year afterwards until a minimum of 1%. The carried interest, so that we align the interests of the people that are managing it and the investors, is that above a hurdle rate of 6% IRR, the upside is divided 80% for the investors and 20% for the persons managing the fund. And so, as mentioned also, we are targeting return on investment, net return for the investors of 4 times the amount invested. And this is one of our first investors in the fund, Golden Visa, retired managing partner, who also is a very fine person and doesn't want to be just a passive investor, but actually wants to chip in and contribute with his network for the success of the startups of the fund, but also the other startups that we help with the Deal Flow brand. And so we think that this is also a very interesting opportunity for high net worth individuals and family offices from India to also benefit with this access to top European startups. So we truly think that this can go beyond the investment itself, but also to access to Europe, not only through the Golden Visa, but also access to European tech, which of course can then leverage companies in India. And so that's what I had to bring to you. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Fernando. So you mentioned about a few questions. So as per the rule for the Golden Visas, the 60% you're going to invest into the Portuguese-based startup and 40% Europe-based, not the international one, right?
Yes, exactly. So 60% will be invested in Portuguese startups and 40% across Europe. Exactly.
Across Europe. So how many, like your fund is of 30 million. So how many startup are you thinking of investing, or have you identified certain startups which you want to invest into it, or they're waiting for it? So where do that part of the deal stands with respect to, like, if somebody is interested and they want to see that what kind of startup you are interested in, or what is your criteria? I know you mentioned in one of your slides that these are the kind of a technology company we want to do it, but like, have you identified some of the startups, or you are still in the process? Where do we stand on that?
So our target is to invest between 20 and 30 startups.
Okay.
We have invested in one and have about 10 in the pipeline.
Okay.
We should be doing our second investment during this month. Also a very interesting Portuguese startup that is working in robot process automation. So basically think about UiPath, but with the setting up of the workflow automatically. So basically the software records what a user is doing of a repetitive task, and he can automate the workflow, and next time he will be able to do it automatically. So it's one very interesting. We have another one also which we are assessing very deeply, which is on the pricing commodity forecasting. And so We have now, they have a lot of academia research behind it on different models and how they can do it better than the existing tools from the competition. We have introduced them to a couple of very big corporates, and the discussions are going well. So we are looking forward to receive the feedback from the corporates and then to do the investment then.
Right. And this investment, what you are making, obviously, it will have your equity with them, or what's generally your terms with those startups?
So we generally have, I would say on average, a 500,000 euro investment in the share capital of the startup. We'll be getting something along 5 to 10% of the share capital. And the objective, of course, is then to follow on with the best performing startups. So we'll be reserving 40% of the fund for follow-on investment. And then through our corporate network to then be able to sell those startups to big corporates and get our money back, plus the 4x return, of course.
Returns, right.
If the startup is really successful, like for instance, some of my unicorns were in the past, and they get to $200 million ARR with big EBITDAs, of course, there is always the way of trying the IPO.
Good story. Good story.
If the IPO window is open at that time. But let's always have a plan B to be able to get our money back and then get it back also to our investors.
Right. But apart from making an investment, do you get involved with the mentoring them or open your doors for the networking? What do you do in that part, or you just do the investment?
So, besides the investment, and as we do the investment, we are already opening the doors to our corporate network. And so the idea is to keep helping the startups by introducing them to big corporates.
Okay.
And we will also like to be on the board of directors of these startups to mentor them, coach them, and also whenever there is a need for another funding round, to of course use our investor network to introduce them to top investors in Europe and in the US.
Right. So basically, I mean, it's not only just an investment, but you are helping them in opening your doors and bringing your resources, network, and everything. So obviously, it's going to help them as well. But generally, how do you look out for these startups? Means do they, like, you have a platforms where they make an applications and that from there you pick up, or you go to the incubation centers, other places? How this initially these startups are being identified?
So through our sister company DealFlow, we are already in contact with some of the best startups across Europe. Because, as I've mentioned, one of the contracts that we have is precisely to do the onboarding of every startup that receives money from the European Innovation Council. So that is a huge source of deal flow. Then, of course, we have also a huge network of investors. And so we get also approached by investors that have already portfolio companies and they want us to invest in their companies. And then we also have a very large network of incubators, accelerators, universities, tech parks that we foster a close relationship with them also. And we go to the demo days, we visit their portfolio companies. And so it's a very nice way also to get deal flow. And also, of course, we have our website and we are open to any startup that would like to apply to our funding. and we will review it and get back to them.
Yeah, but these are predominantly the European startup. But say, for example, if I'm an Indian startup and I want to do it, then what do they have to do it? Become a European entity, or how does it work?
Yes, for this fund that we are raising, the Indian company would have to open at the very least a subsidiary in Portugal or in another European country,
Mhm.
and already have some activity here in Portugal or in Europe.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So that comes under your 60-40% ratios of
Yes.
the fund requirement by the government, by the Portuguese government. So now tell me about this the golden visa programs. How does that process works, or how do you see that like if somebody is interested in tech funds and then wants to obtain the golden visa of Portugal's and then eventually the European, how does that work?
So the Portuguese Golden Visa program is very interesting in the sense that is a very flexible one. So you do the 500,000 investment in an eligible fund, and uh, when as soon as your residence permit is approved, first a
Mhm.
temporary one. After 5 years, you get your permanent residence permit,
Yeah.
and another 5 years you can get your passport and become a Portuguese citizen. The best part of the program is that you are not required to spend most of your time in Portugal. You
Mhm.
actually only need to spend 7 days per year in the first year and 14 days uh, each 2 years afterwards. So again, you could even remain as a tax resident in India and
Mhm.
still have a residence permit in Portugal, which of course enables you then to travel visa-free into the 27 countries of the Schengen zone. So we believe it's a very interesting one for people that want that flexibility to move around freely, and so it's a very nice program.
Right, right. So basically, I mean, it's very interesting proposal. What we have it is that somebody wants to make an investment into the European startup, and at the same time, also on the top of that, you are receiving the European residency, particularly for Portugal's, and then eventually you become a citizen. So it could be a very good planning for the Indian family. I can see that what you just mentioned is that I'm making an investment, so I'm taking a residency of Portugal's. Eventually, I'll get a European citizenship, and that basically opens up my door for all the 27 countries. So generally now, what kind of time it takes to for
Oh,
the this golden visa process?
so there was like a couple of years ago a restructuring in the agency, and so there was some backlog that was created, but things are now smoothing out.
Uh-huh.
At this moment, the timings we have seen is between 12 to 18 months
Okay.
to get the visa permit. And so if you invest, not only you, but also your wife,
Mhm.
your children, and also your parents, if they live within your household, they will be also given a residence permit. And so it's a very interesting thing. Also, in terms of tax planning, there is, for
Mhm.
instance, no inheritance tax in Portugal.
Oh, okay.
So
Wow.
that is also a very interesting one. And if you'd like to move to Portugal and become a tax resident in Portugal,
Uh-huh.
and you are willing to support startups of the fund or the deal flow group, there can also be a possibility of having a board of directors position in that startup and become eligible for the EFICI. So the EFICI is a tax residence program in Portugal designed to attract talent, whereby you have, by and large, a 20% flat tax rate for income earned in Portugal and 0% tax rate on income earned abroad. So it's also a very interesting one, but this one, it clearly demands some effort from your part. So you have to become a board of directors member, you have to attend the board meetings, and you have to dedicate time to that startup, to coach, to mentor it.
So that becomes a very interesting that not only like it gives you one more step as well, that generally people has questions that if I go to Portugal or I take a residency, that what I'm going to do there. But if you are coming from that tech backgrounds and if you are interested, then probably you are going to make an investment into this. But that's also like if you have that kind of a talents where you can work with the startups, it gives you a positions on the board with the startup, particularly the startup or the fund in which you have invested. That's what you are telling me.
Yes, in one of the startups that the fund has invested, or in one of the startups that Deal Flow Group has. And so it's as I've mentioned, if you are willing to support and do some work, it's a great way to have access to the European ecosystem, because
Right.
that's the best way for you to get direct
That
access.
get connected. Yeah, because see, when you move from within the country, even like within the Indias, I live in city of Ahmedabad, but I want to move from here to the another cities. I've been to that city, Mumbai or Delhi, number of times. But when you have to move, obviously you have to create your connections, network, socially and business wise or professionally. And this gives you like a unique opportunities that you create your connections within the at least within the Lisbon or Portugal itself means to start with, and then obviously it opens the doors across Europe.
The great thing about ventures and deal flow is that we are working all the time across Europe. So,
Yeah.
for instance, in December, I went to Sweden for Tetra Pak project that we made. Germany with Merck in January. We did something actually last week in Amsterdam. We were with some of the biggest semiconductors names in Europe, like ST Microelectronics, NTX, NXT, Infineon. So really, it's an awesome possibility, because then you'll be also called to coach some of the startups that will be meeting the corporates. And it's an incredible way to have access to the startups, have access to the European Innovation Council, to have access to the corporates. So it's truly is an amazing network and a great way for you to get access to all of this.
Right. Yeah, but so even though you are sitting in Portugal, it means you are obviously working all across Europe with the multinationals and startups. So that's really great. So how do you see with the Indian startups who could be interested in? I think you already answered that with that respect. So now my next question is: you mentioned about this semiconductor companies. You had it. Do you think that those companies could be interested in Indian market?
So for sure, these big names are already working with the Indian market. So the question then that we would like to also to foster, and we started in a different place, which is Galp, which is the Portuguese main oil and gas company. we started with them doing projects for the EIC, the European Innovation Council. The restriction there is if it's the European Commission paying, of course, we can only present them with startups that have been funded by the EIC. But they had some challenges where they would like us to scout globally. And so in our last program that we did, so Startup the Future, we actually brought them about 300 companies, startups, less than half from Europe, the rest from across the world. North America, Latin America, India, rest of Asia. So again, the objective also of us doing these webinars and working with partners such as yourself is also to progressively getting access to corporates, investors, but also startups in India that then whenever we have one of these matchmaking projects with European corporates, we are able also to bring them the best Indian startups.
Startups, right.
And the other way around also. For instance, as Vittorio presented in one of the webinars, we had an interesting case of an EIC startup that is working with Tata Steel. So we think that is also a very interesting angle for Indian multinationals to be able to benefit also from deep tech startups that have been created in Europe. And just to spice it up, in 2024, there were actually more deep tech startups created in Europe than in the US.
Oh.
Because actually when you compare universities, research centers, Europe actually comes on top. The problem or the opportunity, as you might see it, is that the US has twice the funding available to finance startups than Europe has. And that is also why we created this fund, because as we got a good knowledge of the European ecosystem, we understood that there are amazing opportunities here. And as I mentioned, slightly more startups in Europe than in the US and half the funding. So it's an amazing opportunity here.
Right.
If you put on top the Portuguese Golden Visa, maybe even some tax benefits and the access to this whole ecosystem, I think it's a wonderful proposition.
Yeah, but I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think when we started talking first time, I mean, I realized it, and that's why we started doing these webinars. But when I talk to these people now in India, since last couple of months, I'm talking to them, and with this webinar series this morning also, I was talking. See, for the Indian market, what has happened is that they've looked at the India and then straight away fly to the USA. In between doesn't exist. For them, it's whether it's a company, whether it's an export company, whether it's a service providers, where you want to go. One answers USA. One answers USA, irrespective, whether it's an immigration, study, business expansions, anything, the only answer comes up from them is USA. And then other English-speaking countries like Canada, UK, Australia, and New Zealand. But Europe, and that's why we see very minimum Indian companies who are doing business with Europe, which is with the FTA, I think it's going to be a tremendous opportunities happening on both ways. I think definitely it is going to be a unbelievable opportunity would be there because both sides are very, very optimistic, very, very positive about the bilateral trade between the one country and a continent, actually, 27 countries, and one country is on the other sides. But yeah, It is going to be a very good opportunities. And I don't know, some of the opportunities we are not looking at it, but I think, Fernando, in the down the road, those opportunities are going to pop up and they'll say that why not this way? And we are looking at opportunities from our perspective, what we are trying to do as well, but more opportunities will
Yeah,
come. I think before the webinar, I just,
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. Because I also think that unfortunately the US is becoming also less stable,
right,
uh, less reliable, and I think that it makes a lot of sense for companies that are starting their journey abroad to also think about markets that might not be as huge as the US, but are a lot more
right.
stable. And you know what you can count with. And I think that also makes a big difference. And
Yeah,
uh, and when you actually consider Europe as a whole, and not only each country individually, the size of the market is actually comparable to the US.
yeah. I mean, so I know I have traveled to Europe by train in way back in 1988 when I was a young student and under 26. Means the size of the Europe and traveling by trains, and it was altogether different fun. And also last year I was in France with this one. I mean, it's an amazing, amazing place. I love it whenever I'm in Europe. I mean, people say one way it's an expensive, but yeah, what the Europe has to offer compared to the USA, it's in par. I mean, for sure, it's in par. So anyway, I think we have enough time where I think if
Yes,
questions we are ready to answer. Otherwise, we will close this webinar for now. And with all the participants who has participated, thank you very much. And those who have not participated, anyway, we will send you out the presentation which Fernando made, and also this recording of the whole webinar will be sending it out, and we'll continue to doing this webinars as we go along. Further, as and when we see that there is something which we'd like to share it with our followers and potential clients, we'll be more than happy to do that one. So once again, thank you very much, Fernando, and thank you everybody
absolutely.
for joining.
Thank you very much for all the
Thank you.
attendance also. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.